Welcome to BeyondBIM. We hope that you all continue to stay safe and, most importantly, at home. Today, I'm really excited to bring to you a discussion on blockchain and its implications for the construction industry. In this episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Abel Maciel. Today, we are going beyond just the hype of blockchain. We will be exploring what type of solutions could be on the market and what can already be built from open source libraries for construction. He is also the co-author of the Construction 4.0 with his book chapter titled The Use of Blockchain for Enabling Construction 4.0. Our speaker today is no stranger to the needs of the industry or the capabilities of blockchain. Dr. Abel is an architect and a senior research associate at UCL. He tutors UCL's Bartlett Faculty of the Built Environment and the Faculty of Engineering. In addition to that, he is the founding director of a specialist consultancy called Design Computation, where he delivers BIM, Programmatic Design, and smart contracts. And if this wasn't enough to keep him busy, he is also the founding director and academic lead of the Construction Blockchain Consortium and the initiator of the Design Computation Wiki page, which is also an open knowledge platform for all topics related to computational design. Without further ado, let's take a listen to what Dr. Abel has to say on the use of blockchain and how construction companies can begin to play with some of these technologies. So let's just start off with the first question, if you would be so kind and just introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, and maybe perhaps give some insight as to what got you initially interested in blockchain, specifically in the built environment in construction, design, and operations.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me for this very interesting podcast. So I'm Dr. Abel Maciel. I'm a senior research associate at UCL, and at University College London, I operate mainly between three faculties, three departments. I collaborate with the Bartlett Faculty of the Built Environment, with the Engineering Faculty, and that includes a little bit with Computer Science colleagues, and with the Neuroscience Faculty. So within the Bartlett, I spend most of my time in the Bartlett School of Architecture, and now more and more with the Bartlett School of Construction and Project Management. I'm setting up a new master's there with our colleagues, and I'm also tutoring the engineering department on engineering and financial modeling. But my background is really architecture. I study architecture at the Bartlett, and then I did my master's and doctorate and everything else at the Bartlett, but I do collaborate a lot with the computer science, engineering, and neuroscience. So as a senior research fellow, or senior research associate, actually, I've been investigating things like game theoretical modeling and multi-party decision making, and from there, the interesting blockchain appeared, because blockchain, in essence, is a data architecture for value transactions. And then eventually I, together with other two professors at UCL, with Professor Alan Penn and Professor Philip Treleaven, we've started the Construction Blockchain Consortium. But we have quite a big team. A number of people have been contributing to the consortium. We have a nice steering committee, and this is quite international. So besides my academic work, I also work as a consultant in London in build information modeling and parametric modeling and smart contracts development. So I overlook a number of projects around the world, helping teams to deliver high quality build information modeling and deliver projects on time using digital twin techniques. And I work on a number of very large, complex projects, such as the new Google campus in Mountain View. To an extent, I helped the Apple campus in Cupertino, mainly working on the BIM of the cladding system with an EOC, which is an engineering practice here in London. And I briefly collaborate with Foster & Partners on this as well, but more on spatial navigation point of view and the neuroscience department at UCL. And a number of other projects. Some are very small as well, but very challenging, such as the Houston Yards vessel in New York, in Manhattan, which is a Thomas Heatherwick sculpture, very large sculpture, which is a collection of parametric staircases that the public can access. And it forms a vessel, a sculpture in the shape of a vessel. And the geometry was very complex. And although it's not the biggest project I worked on, was a very complex one. And to deliver that in BIM, what we would call BIM level 3+, was hard. So in the private sector, we see a very demanding clientele, and we need to work really hard to prepare geometries so they are fit for manufacturing, etc. So I do consultancy on that as well.
Okay, so quite an extensive array of experience, both practical and academic. So from your research into some of the emerging technologies, how do you foresee blockchain being able to transform the construction industry, as you've discussed in your book chapter?
So I don't think blockchain will solve all the problems, all the issues in the construction sector. Blockchain is just part of the answer, but it's a very important part of that answer, because blockchain is a fundamental change in how we structure data. And in Construction 4.0 and Industry 4.0, as information exchange becomes more dynamic, and it's shaping the way we interact with the world, that the structuring of data is very, very important. So I think what blockchain will do for the construction sector, it will bring new levels of transparency. I think the industry has been walking towards a more transparent collection of processes. We understand the importance of being more transparent and the importance of collaboration in the construction sector. And a blockchain is the key technology for that. So I think transparency will be improved with the use of blockchain. And with this transparency, we're going to have a better project knowledge model. We will understand what is happening in projects and how knowledge generated and managed in projects will be distributed to create a kind of information symmetry in projects, so people know what to do and when, and that they can rely on the data they are seeing, they are accessing, because they know that that data is blockchain. And this is, I think, a key thing, especially when you talk about professional services in the industry. And I would say the other thing that will be very positively disrupted with the use of blockchain in construction is the improvement of supply chains. So we'll have far better products and services supply chains, and this improvement in supply chain will be not only for the top tiers of supply chains, but to all the tiers, to the lowest tiers of the supply chain. And there is the prospect that we could put this kind of a tiering system of supply chains upside down. Blockchain is a technology that can potentially make the very low tiers of the supply chain much more empowered to contribute to projects. And with this, we would have lots of potentially very good effects. Like we could potentially create blockchain solutions that will decrease dramatically the carbon footprint of projects.
That's interesting. I've not heard many people discuss that in relation to the built environment. Can you elaborate more on what do you mean by empowering those in the supply chain?
Right. Okay. So if you imagine a world where we have a very clever system using data from supply chains, capturing supply chains, and learning from that data, and that later data, it's much more reliable because it's immutable and people cannot tamper with that data. We could start to think about what can describe like a shrinking the supply chain. We wouldn't need so many tiers. So the middleman would be less necessary, less critical for that supply chain. So the actual people making or delivering a service or making a product will be eventually requested by a smart contract to provide something for a particular project. And this could be fine-tuned to take in consideration geographical location. So we could then say, okay, we want to create a building, but we want all tiers of the supply chain, or the people actually delivering the product, or the products, the assets, or the services that we need to for this particular project to be geolocated close to the construction site. So we could create a system that would benefit local workforce. Of course, this will never be possible. I work on very complex projects where things are manufactured in Italy and this has to be shipped over to New York or California and so on. Yeah. So the world is very interconnected nowadays. Mm-hmm. But we understand the need of being more sustainable. So blockchain can be formulated in a way that sustainability, it's ingrained, is code hardwired and code into the solutions we are creating with blockchain.
So I think you already touched a little bit upon the next question, which is, okay, if that is the idealized scenario of applying blockchain, then what might be the current barriers for the industry to get to that stage?
Right. Yeah, that's a very big question. It's a very challenging question because the construction sector is a very old sector. The construction industry is one of the oldest industries we have. I think one of the problems we have is the legacy of this industry. There is a culture that exists in the industry, and this is not just in the UK or in France or in Morocco or whatever in Africa. It's a global thing. And it's hard to go against this culture. So, on the other hand, we have this situation where we don't understand blockchain very well. We don't understand the technology; it's very new, and we understand the technicalities of it, but we don't understand the collaterals and what sort of systemic effects it will have. So, I would say the things we need to do, the barriers we need to postpone to bypass is to really think about financial and cash flow models we have for the construction sector. There is a lot of legacy there. We need to think about how to deal with this culture, because we cannot simply say, "Oh, let's change everything," because then the industry is not going to adopt that. So that will be like a big cross there. You'll not bypass that situation. We need to work with the industry to gradually improve it and make sure that the commercial sensitivities are respected, so we can incrementally improve financial models, maybe come across new financial models for construction, and think very carefully how they will be incorporated in the current culture. and also think about cash flow systems and the legal legacy we have, the construction contract forms we have at the moment, and how they can be modified to address automation. And then we need also, I think, to focus on how we can think about quality and project performance as priorities for building procurement, and how this can be addressed in automation in legal contracts. So we have, with Construction 4.0 and with Industry 4.0, we have this new wave of a legal tech. So there are lots of new applications from machine learning and distributed ledger technology for legal systems and how lawyers do their work. And we need to, as we define and create these new digital tools, we need to think about how this can be the device for better quality and better project performance in construction projects. The other thing we need to do, I think, and that's, I think, my final point on this, is we need to play with the technology. We need to go out there and play with the blockchain technology and see how this can be used to solve problems in the construction. We will only learn if we actually play with the technology, and we try to build something with the open source projects we have out there, and then see how maybe in not very big steps, but the incremental steps, we start to incorporate this in the processes we have today.
I mean, you've given a lot of interesting examples of the ways in which blockchain can be applied. And if we look at the technologies that the industry is currently still, some are readily adopting, some are still learning how to adopt it. You will know this better than I, given that you already consult in the area of BIM. So if you think about blockchain technology, do you see this as something that will also be tied with the design data, the BIM data, which we're already digitalizing through the architects and the contractors and the stakeholders involved?
Yes, I think so. I think one very good thing about blockchain is that it can be designed to be very good at microtransactions. So you can have many transactions happening in the building information model, and this can be captured with blockchain. And once this is done, you can create a very reliable database for intellectual property. So I think IP, it's a very big motivation for early application of blockchain in building information models, or I should say, the use of blockchain in early applications of building information models, right? So in the design and consultancy stage, in the early stages of their IBA plan of work, blockchain would be very useful because it can help engineers and architects to protect the intellectual property. And that's a good thing, I believe, because it would help small practices. It would help the designers that work on their own, but I can contribute to larger projects, and I can capitalize on this because they can protect the intellectual property.
Yeah, that's an interesting and a fair point about the IP and the importance of that. So with that in mind, do you foresee that blockchain technologies can, as you said, there is a very particular type of culture in our industry. Do you foresee that it could help somehow shift some of that mindset and ways of thinking, like we've seen that blockchain technologies have shifted the way of thinking in the financial world? Do you think we could incur kind of similar shifts in mindset for our industries?
Yes. And how do I see this? I think first of all, we need to make sure that blockchain is well applied in the sector, so it doesn't fall in the trap that is just benefiting the status quo. It needs to be applied to disrupt the current status quo and create value and improve the industry. But how this is going to shift mindsets, I think with the advent of blockchain in its key features like immutability and provenance of data, people will start the simple application of blockchain in the design and construction processes, never mind the actual facilities management stage, but in the design and construction. Well, I believe that this will create a kind of a collective psychological effect of responsibility, because then you know that whatever you do is going to be logged. So design liability will be easier to be searched and to be interrogated. And I think this is quite key. And I think this will create a kind of situation where long-term reputation will be very important. It will be very easy to trace where things came from and who did it and in what circumstances that was executed. And that capability to trace products and services and decision making will definitely create a changing mindset, I believe. From the moment people know that whatever they are doing, it's traceable and it's immutable. So even if you prefer to find the data yourself, or if you don't believe that whoever is investigating a particular problem in a construction project, if you prefer to believe that the data they are showing you is not correct, you can consult the data yourself and you see that the data is what it is and what you see is what you see. That immutability and that provenance is quite a strong factor on changing the dynamics of teams and changing the dynamics in projects. So I think the changing mindset will come very much from this immutability and traceability of blockchain. The other thing I can add to that is that blockchain is really a value network. And with this value network, you can process payments more efficiently. And that's also quite key. I think if you have a smart contract, processing payments automatically for given certain conditions or certain criteria has been met, the dynamics of contractual obligations and the dynamics of contractual payment will change dramatically. So things like a retention, contractual retention, and the percentages that are charged in contractual retentions will have to be reassessed, because at the moment it seems to vary quite a lot from project to project. And if, let's say, construction contract publishers agree to publish a smart contract that is endorsed by professional bodies, then that percentage will have to be agreed. And if that is being used in projects, will be impossible to change that percentage of retentions. So certain abuses we have in the industry, certain misuse of things, of devices like retention, will probably be extinguished very quickly. And this will cause a huge change in mindset as well. So how cash flow is articulated will be highly disrupted in many ways in a positive way. And I think this is something that actually might kind of slow down the adoption because it is very disruptive.
Yes, it might face further resistance.
Potentially,
that particular
yes.
shift. Yes, yeah. And okay, so if we take a more practical standpoint of view, so many of the stakeholders in our industry, they seem to be kind of passive consumers of technology solutions that they use to try and improve their ways of working. But you talked about something really interesting, which is to play with these technologies, to experiment and to kind of push the boundary. Do you think it's something that we'll be seeing, that the technology providers are embedding blockchain into existing solutions, or are we at the stage where our industry stakeholders are already testing this, developing their own solutions?
I think we have a little bit of both. We have technology providers embedding some blockchain in what they do, and we have the industry thinking about how it can be addressed, how blockchain can be addressed, and the people in the industry independently creating technologies. I myself, in my consultancy, I am creating a blockchain application for BIM. So I'm a select developer of a leading BIM authoring software out there, the most used BIM authoring software and BIM collaborative platform out there. And I've been working on my own capacity and with my team to create blockchain enable applications for that platform. This is we create a new startup. The technology is working, and we think this technology is very exciting. And
are you able to share the name of your startup?
So at the moment, this is a technology. The intellectual property of that technology belongs to Design Computation Ltd, my consultancy. But we gave a name. We gave a name to the technology itself. It's called SciPal, and SciPal is an acronym that means Exchange Intelligence Proof of Work. And it's an app that you cannot download it yet and use it yet, but eventually it will be integrated with BIM 360.
Excellent.
Yes, and what it does, it creates some project variables that can really capture not only activity but also some key information in projects and who did that. So it creates an accountability chain within the BIM. And we think this is a very interesting thing. It can also do other things that I can discuss more when the app is live. But it can really help the lower tiers of the construction sector and design and engineering practices in general. We're very keen to help not only the top tier or what we would call the Formula One stars of the construction sector, the signature architects and the top engineers out there, because this is just a small fraction of the construction sector. We need to think about the construction sector as a whole, and we need to think about solutions holistically and how this is going to lift and improve the sector from the bottom up. So there's small producers, there's small manufacturers and designers that are experts in what they do, but often are not recognized because they work as contractors for larger design organizations. They need to benefit as well. We need to make sure that intellectual property and fairness works well in the industry. So we designed the app with this in mind. So everybody has to benefit. We are also working on this as a layer of consensus. So in blockchain, in any blockchain, you have to have a consensus mechanism to synchronize the ledger. And we're trying to engineer a consensus mechanism that is beneficial for the construction sector in particular. So if you see in blockchains such as Bitcoin, you have a proof of work consensus mechanism, which is just uses computational power to synchronize a ledger through miners, through people selling that computational power. They are called miners. And if they collate, they create a block in the blockchain, then they get Bitcoins from the system. The system generates Bitcoins and pay them. So we're thinking about how this can evolve. You have new concepts of consensus mechanisms out there, including proof of stake and so forth. And we are thinking how we can construct a blockchain that would be particularly useful for the construction sector.
So would you still be relying on, again, miners, and they would be rewarded in Bitcoin?
So there are some technologies out there that are self-mining. So let's say if you're using your computer to log data in a blockchain, your computer itself, through not cryptocurrencies, but cryptography in general, that can be tokenized into a cryptocurrency, can self-mine that transaction.
Okay.
So you don't need to send that information to the blockchain and expect other machines or wait other machines out there to mine the transactions for you. This could be self-mining. So as you execute the transaction, that transaction is allocated to a block in the blockchain. And this could be designed in a kind of very secure way, not a kind of very secure, but in a very secure way. You wouldn't have a problem with the provenance and immutability of that data. And on the other hand, what you would benefit from is the low power feature of this functionality. So you wouldn't have to throw a lot of energy in this blockchain to get the consensus done.
Yeah, I guess that's good, because there's been a lot of criticism about the energy consumption side of mining.
Yes, absolutely. So on the Bitcoin blockchain, the amount of energy used to mine and maintain the blockchain could power Greece, could power an entire country.
Wow.
So it's a growth. Yeah. So I think it's a couple of nuclear power stations that you need to feed the Bitcoin blockchain. So of course, this is the current state of the Bitcoin blockchain. There is nothing stopping us to prioritize energy efficiency technologies for the Bitcoin blockchain and try to drop that. Because what we need to do is to think, okay, what can we do? What sort of better technology can we develop to lower the power of the Bitcoin blockchain energy consumption? And this is possible. Like, for example, a few years ago, we used to use computers and graphics cards to mine for Bitcoins. And nowadays we have specially designed microchips for mining for Bitcoin. They're called ANT chips. So an ANT chip is much more efficient. But what people did is if you into good investments a few years ago, is to get a lot of ANT microchips and serialize them and mine even faster and it use even more energy. But we might reach a point that we say, okay, this is ridiculous. We cannot spend that much energy on the Bitcoin blockchain. Let's think about a more energy efficient way. It might be that it will be a legislation in some countries somewhere and say, okay, we can only use renewable energy for powering the Bitcoin blockchain. That might be something. So people need to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that we do, and we're trying to cooperate with academia and the industry, is that we work very closely with the Parliament. So as a research associate at UCL, I work very closely with the British Parliament to develop white papers to inform policy and regulation for blockchain applications in the construction sector. And I'm working quite intensely on this at the moment. I'm working on a white paper for this first white paper will be on cash flow and financing in construction and how blockchain might have an effect on that.
And do you see that governments and governance will play a push for our industry to sort of begin to take up some of these technologies?
I believe so. I am a strong believer that this will happen because this would be for the benefit of the British industry. So if we have rigorous, high-quality processes in the construction sector, we are potentially in a very strong position to export this as a service or as a product to other places in the world. And because blockchain creates this accountability of what is going on and this transparency, of course, the British industry, the British construction industry would be favored greatly in the international market. So I think it is for the British construction industry best interest to implement technologies like this. But there is, of course, a dichotomy and a big dilemma there because in one hand, blockchain can disrupt financing and cash flow, and lots of clients in the industry will not be happy about it because we have particular ways to do things. But on the other scenario, we have this great opportunity to upgrade the industry so it becomes a kind of something that we can offer to the world. It becomes the means of progress to lots of places around the world, and it can be delivered by the British construction industry because we can guarantee that transparency. So we need to play the two things very carefully. We cannot make our internal industry very unhappy and I think just about the big global players. But we need to see that there is a big opportunity there, and by leveraging the internal industry, the internal construction sector here, how we do things at home, leverage it to a standard that they can also play internationally with the big players. And I think this is very much the interest of the construction sector, I would say.
That's really interesting. It's almost leveling the playing field for some of the stakeholders, like you said. So you have had, obviously, your academic experience right now ongoing. You're conducting research in this domain, but you're at the same time involved with industry and you're implementing these technologies and you're building solutions in that domain. So you kind of understand both worlds. So what advice would you give for some of the upcoming researchers wanting to make a shift or make a change within our industries? Is there anything you'd give them as a key piece of advice, since you have experience in both areas?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I my main advice, I would go back to that point, play with the technology, look for open source projects out there. There are amazing open source projects. Most of blockchain technology is open source because it's nature, because it can be set up as this sovereignless database. And as a sovereignless database, the best way to go about it is to make it open source so everyone can see what the technology is doing. Otherwise, you break the trust mechanism in blockchain. So look for nice high quality open source projects like the Ethereum Foundation is a good place to go. The Linux Foundation Hyperledger project is a fantastic place to look for groundbreaking technology, and look for neutral platforms to discuss the technology. I'm a little bit biased here, but I would suggest the Construction Blockchain Consortium, which is this consortium I've created at UCL, but it is really an open platform, open, neutral platform to everyone. We collaborate with University of Cambridge, with the University of Oxford, and a number of other universities here in London, with Imperial and King's College. It's really an arena for discussion and also to play with the technology. So we run regular hackathons. So far we've done hackathons here at UCL, but we hope to go around and run hackathons everywhere. It would be great to do something like that at Cambridge, so researchers and enthusiasts can come along and play with the technology. If you want to be mailed about the activities of the consortium of the CBC, please go to the CBC website. This is constructionblockchain.org, and subscribe. And we promise not to spam you or spam anyone. We just send a couple of emails a month, and they are generally highly relevant. We don't sell anything. We are literally a neutral platform, academic-based, but for the industry. And if you want to get more engaged, if you are in the industry, and if you think, okay, there is something, I have an idea, and I want to develop that idea, and I need help, and I need to collaborate with people who actually know what they are talking about. We need to, this is just like a little historical reference here. Like when blockchain started, there were lots of scams out there, and people creating tokens. We had ICOs and people coming up with tokens that did absolutely nothing, and are getting sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars and just running away. So we what we need to do is to dissipate all this. Let's just say, okay, let's not do this anymore, and let's move on and think about the technology for its merits, for what it can do. And for that, you need a neutral platform. And this is very much the reason why we create this consortium. So if you think, I have a good idea, I think blockchain really can solve this problem, consider to become a member of the CBC. Then we can mobilize researchers in our network, and also other people in the industry that might want to team up with you. And as you become a member, then we will create the conditions to deliver that project, deliver that piece of technology. But yeah, I would say key thing, play with the technology, subscribe, and I maintain an online library that people can subscribe for free. The library is free to access. We only ask you to actually contribute to the library, because you'll be accessing hundreds of references, maybe, I believe nowadays, almost 1,000 references on blockchain technology. So if you subscribe for that, also contribute. And then we have a code base. So in GitHub, we have a construction blockchain repository where we share the work we've developed in our hackathons, and everybody is welcome to download and look at the code and play with the code.
And that GitHub is also called CBC, that repository?
Is called Construction Blockchain. So the link for the GitHub is on the constructionblockchain.org website, and then you can access. I believe it's completely open. If not, you need to create a GitHub account and then subscribe to the repository, and then we can look at the code. We are technology agnostic, so we have smart contracts, blocks of code developed in Hyperledger, Hyperledger Fabric, in particular, R3 Corda, and in Solidity for Ethereum. So it's a mix of things. So you can pick and mix the things that you like, and learn from that.
Thank Thank you for tuning in to listen to BeyondBIM podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more from our latest episodes, then you can visit BeyondBIM, which is available on SoundCloud and iTunes and all the other major podcast providers.